Welcome back, folks. We are heading down to Granville to play some 1-3. If you're new to the channel, this is something I do every once in a while. I record every single hand play. If I raise 5-3 suited from the button, get 3-bet and fold, that makes it into the video, so you get an overarching view of how I play every single hand. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. 1-3, maybe some 2-5. We'll see what runs today. See you there. Here we are, folks. We have opened up a brand new table, sitting down with the table max $500. And our very first shuffle, we pick up 9-8 of spades. Those are hearts, Sam. We pick up 9-8 of hearts. There is a limper, and we bump it up to $15. Folds back around. My opponent does make the call, so we're going heads up to this flop, which comes down ace, king, queen, 2 hearts, and a diamond. Got a flush draw here, and it's supposed to be better for us, but my opponent looks like he wants to lead this board, which would be odd after limp calling. I guess he has jack-10 offsuit, but after a little bit of thought, my opponent does go for the check, ignores his lizard brain impulses to lead, and now it's our turn to bet. So we fired in $10 here, and my opponent goes for the check raise up to $35. Probably just has jack-10 offsuit here a lot. Maybe king-queen? I don't know. Maybe queen-jack or king-10? I have no idea. It's probably just jack-10 offsuit a lot of the time, but we've got a flush draw. We're in position. I go for the call. Head to the turn, and it's an interesting one. It is the ace of clubs, so king queen did just get counterfeit, but if he was check raising ace 7 suited or something, it's not a great card. But then he checks it over, so I think he doesn't have trips anymore. He could still have jack 10, so maybe we just fire 1-bet, give up river. I have no idea what he has. The only hand that I can think of is jack 10. I don't really want to try and bet make that fold, but maybe we should. And we have a flush draw to go back on, and maybe if another ace, king, or queen comes, then we can get him off. So let's just go for a bet. $100 into the middle, setting up for the river shove. My opponent gives us some thought and folds. Great news. We're off to a great start here, picking up a $204 pot to kick things off. On to the next hand. We have a middle position limp. I look down at king 6 of diamonds in the low jack. One thing that I've noticed from doing quite a bit of solver work lately is that the suited kings are becoming stronger than suited connectors, and even more so when your opponents are quite passive. It's just nicer having that blocker to block their extremely value heavy 3-bet range, so you do get to realize a little bit more equity than, say, 7-6 suited. And then they also have better potential to flush over flush your opponents who can't fold a hand like, say, queen 8 suited. So I kind of just like going crazy with my suited king X and just sort of treating them like suited aces. So I bumped this one up to 15 over the limp. We do get a caller from the small blind, as well as a big blind and the limper. So we're going 4 ways to this flop. Not ideal, but it comes down king, 4, deuce, 2 clubs, and a spade. Action checks to me, and with a kicker this week, we don't really need too much protection. Any hand that we're going to, if we bet, a flush draw is still going to call anyways, and I'm not that fussed about an ace high continuing. So I just check this back. We head to the turn. It is another 4. Action checks to me once again. It's definitely time to start betting here. I don't want to go too big, just $30, about half pot. See if we can get some continues from hands like pocket 5s, pocket 6s. Small blind does indeed continue, and the other 2 opponents fold. Head to the river. It is an interesting one. Another 4. So we make a full house. We only lose to a 4 or pocket kings or pocket aces, which are quite unlikely. But now small blind does something kind of crazy and decides to lead out for $85. This is kind of odd, but I think we just got to go for the raise for value here. It seems very bluffy, but just in case he's got like a weirdly played pocket 9s or pocket 10s here. And since it does feel quite off, I am going to be bluffing at this a lot. So might as well have some thinner value bets in here as well, thinner value raises. So my sizing here when removal is so strong is just always a min raise. So that is what I do. $170 into the middle, and my opponent doesn't fold right away. We're hoping that we don't get jammed on because I probably fold. Yeah, I'd probably just fold if he jammed. It's not for much more. He'd only have like 150 behind, but it would just always be quads. It would never be like king 10. But anyways, my opponent just decides to fold. So we get an extra $85 out of the river lead, which is very, very nice. And we're up to a great start here. We have a limp under the gun, and then we open up the 6-5 of hearts on the button to $15. Do love me a suited connector, even though it's a baby one. Now we're going to play this hand in position when my opponent calls. Heads up to a flop of ace, 9, 5, rainbow. Action checks to me, and this is a board we're going to want to go quite big on. We're looking to target his like 8, 9 suiteds, 7, 5 suiteds, those types of hands, and put them into a really rough spot right away on the flop. So we go for pretty close to pot here, $25. My opponent calls pretty quickly. Off to the turn, and it comes down the 4 of clubs. Action checks to me once again, and on this turn, we don't want to go too big. I don't think going polar makes too much sense. We're trying to target like the sticky 9x that call flop, because none of them really pick up equity on this turn. So we're trying to fold out 10-9, 9-8, and I think something like 60% of the pot will do that. So $50 is my decision. And once again, my opponent continues. We're heading to the river, and it comes down the deuce of clubs. Really nice run out. My opponent checks once again. And I think for us, we want to be bluffing with a 5 in our hand just to block bottom set, which is my opponent's most likely candidate for a call. Also blocking ace 5 is really nice, although I think he just check raises that pure on the flop anyways, so I'm not too worried about that. But 5s is the main concern. We are probably targeting an ace now if we want to get it to fold, so I'm not really in the habit of trying to make top pair fold in live low stakes, but I think this opponent will be able to fold a weaker ace if we put maximum leverage on his range, which means he's got 300 and I think 330 is what I counted him to have behind. Let's go for that. I jam all in here. $330-ish is what I thought. And my opponent just snap folds. So very good news there. We probably got him to fold like a decent ace. So very happy with how I played that one. And sometimes you just got to go for it. We open up the king, queen offsuit up to $10 in the hijack, and action folds around. On to the next hand. We have 3 limps, and we got 8-6 offsuit in the big blind. I check back my option, and we go 4 ways to the flop of ace, king, 10, 2 hearts, 1 spade. Action checks through to the turn. It's another 10. I check once again. Somebody bets $10, and I get out of there. We have a limp, and I look down at 9-6 of diamonds in the hijack. Versus this opponent specifically, I do want to ISO quite wide here, so I go, instead of doing suited 1 gappers, I up it to suited 2 gappers. A little bit loose, but she's just very fit or fold on the flop, and we just get to print money by making a ton of C-bets. So 15 into the middle, and we do go heads up to this flop, which comes down very good for our hand. It's ace, king, 6, 2 diamonds, and a club. She checks it to me, and I go for a small bet here of 15. You know, she's going to continue with a king or an ace, so I do size up a little bit, and she does make the call. We head to the turn, and it's a very good one, the 7 of diamonds. She checks it to me once again, and I think I want to go for all of it. She's definitely got a piece here, so let's try it. I put another bet here, 45 into the middle. She gives it a little bit of thoughts, but unfortunately just folds and gets out of the way. We have a limp under the gun, and I raise the 6-5 of spades up to 15 to try an ISO. We get a call from the button as well as the limper, so going 3 ways to this flop, which comes down ace, king, queen, all diamonds. Pretty good board. I'm going to go for a small bet here. We get to get away with a very small bet on these monotone boards, so I put in $10, button, and the limper call, so we're just done with a hand here. And when the turn comes, the 3 of spades, I do indeed check fold to a $35 bet. We have an early position limper, and I check my option in the big blind with a 10-5 of diamonds. Heads up to a flop of queen, jack, 6, rainbow. I check it over, and my opponent checks back. Turn comes down the 4 of spades. I see no sense in bluffing here, so I just continue my checking, and my opponent checks once again. River is the deuce of hearts. I check once again, my opponent checks, and he has the ace, 10 off, and it's going to take down the $7 pot. The lady to our right has limped once again, and I bump up the ace, 10 offsuit up to $15. She ends up calling, we go heads up to this flop, which is pretty interesting. It's king, jack, 5, all spades. Action checks to me, and I'm going to go for a very small bet here. Just target, 10-9 of hearts, something like that. So $5, and she calls. Off to the turn, it is another jack. She checks it to me once again, and could go either way here between betting or checking. I think since I size so small on the flop, I want to put in one more bet. I think she would call with like sixes, no spades. So we're just going to target those type of hands. Don't have to go too big. 20 into the middle. And once again, she makes the call. Heads to the river, and it comes down the beautiful Queen of Diamonds. We make our straight. She checks once again, and this is just a green light to bet once again. I can't see us losing to anything. I think we would have heard from a check raise on the flop return, or just one of those weird river donks. So I think it's pretty clear we got the best hand here, and I size up to $70. She gives it 3-4 seconds of thought, tosses in the call. I announce straight. She has the queen, 4 of spades for the flop flush. That pot is not going to go our way. A little bit unfortunate to river that queen. We probably do give up the river if it's a brick. The same lady has limp, and we raise up the pocket tens up to $15. We got a call from the button as well as the limper. So we're going 3 ways to this flop, which does not come down good. It's ace, king, 3, rainbow. Checks to me. I see no sense in betting, so I just check. And we head to the turn, which is the queen of diamonds. This is not going well. Action checks to me. I once again check, and button checks as well. The river is another queen. Middle position checks. I'm just trying to get to showdown. I check as well. Button puts in a bet of $30. Ugh. Middle position does make the call, so we fold, and they both have queen 9 suited. All right, well, we started off very hot, but we are not running the best now, but we're still up a little bit. Let's continue trudging along. On to the next hand. We open up the king deuce suited under the gun. I do like using the suited kings as opens in live low stakes. So we raise it up to $10. We get 1 caller before the lady to my right now puts in a re-raise. It's quite cheap. It's only $40, so a very small re-raise, but versus somebody that's like limp calling queen 9 suited, this is obviously going to be a very strong hand, and we're just going to be dominated way too often here. So I just go for the fold, and button folds as well. We've got 2 limps, and then we raise the 9-7 of spades in the small blind up to $20. Big blind folds, and both the limpers make the call. 3 ways to this flop, which comes down ace, ace, 4, 1 spade, 2 diamonds. I'm going to go for a small bet here and then evaluate. I don't see us getting floated by anything less than a pair here, so I make it 15, under the gun calls, and cut off folds. Off to the turn, and it comes down to 7 of hearts. I think for a little bit, and I think there's enough value here in going for another small bet here. We can get called by 6s, 5s, 3s, deuces that just aren't believing, as well as some flush draws, and I think a lot of his ace-x will just raise the flop. It sounds crazy, but I just expect a hand like, say, ace-8 to be raising the flop at a very high frequency versus my small bet. So I'm going to continue barreling here for value, and I put in a small bet of $30. My opponent once again makes the call. We head to the river, and it comes down the 5 of spades. Now, I don't think we are going to get any more value here, so I'm going to check it over, see if he does want to bluff at it, or most likely just check it back and take a showdown. So I check it over. He doesn't think for too long, and then puts in a big bet of $100. Now it's back on me, and we've kind of put ourselves into a tough spot here, but I think that's okay. I had good reason for my flop and turn, and now I just give it some thought, and it doesn't feel like he has much here. I'm expecting pocket 4s, maybe pocket 5s here, and then ace 4 suited, and I can't really think of any other hand that he could have here that wants to do this. I just see him raising anything that's slightly weaker for value on the flop. So if he had like ace 10, ace 9, I think he just raises flop. So he's saying he's got a full house here or nothing. And I really want to get super curious, but also anytime a 3-digit bet goes in at 1-3, it's just never a bluff, you know? Even if you can only point to like 2 combos of value, it's probably just those 2 combos of value. So after quite a bit of thought, I just decide to make a disciplined fold, but I don't feel great about it. I feel like we may have got bluffed here, but also I've got way better hands to call with here, so we're going to fold that one and move on to the next hand. Moving things along, we open up the Jack 9 offsuit to $10 in the cutoff. We get a call from the button, and both blinds fold. Heads up to a flop of 10-6-6 rainbow. A good roll for cutoff versus button is going to be checking a lot, and almost all of your offsuit hands are going to be checking because we have 3 backdoor flush draws to choose from for bluffs. So Jack 9 offsuit going to be a pure check here, and it's also good because I think these players are going to bet too often here. My opponent does go for the bet of $10 here. I think he sizes up a little bit with a 10 or a 6, so this feels kind of like 7s, 5s, something like that going for protection. So let's just go for 1 raise, and if we turn an open-ender, we'll continue barreling. I make it $30, and after a little bit of thought, my opponent just folds. So pretty nice way to pick up a hand there. We have another limp, and we open up the Jack 10 of hearts up to $15. We get one caller in position as well as a limper, so going three ways to this flop, which comes down ace 5-3 rainbow. We don't even have a backdoor flush draw, so when it checks to me, I just check it over. These ace with two wheel cards are usually pretty bad for you anyways, but button does fire up for 20, under the gun folds, and of course we just fold as well. We have two limps, and we open up the king 4 diamonds up to $20, trying to ISO. It unfortunately doesn't work, and we end up going four ways to this flop, where we do flop a pair on 10, 7, 4, 2 spades and a club. Action checks to me, and this board is way too connected. We are going to get floated here very often from one of these three players, so I just check it back. Turn's not great. It's a 6 of clubs, very connected. Action checks to me once again, and I decide just to check this back. River is the deuce of diamonds. Pretty good card. Action once again checks to me, and I see no sense in bluffing. I think they're just going to look me up with a 7, so I check it back, and we manage to beat a queen 9 suited, ace queen suited, and something else. And our 4 is good here for this $83 pot. The lady to my right has once again limped, and I've once again ISO'd her with the pocket 8s to $15. We end up going pretty multi-way to the flop, so 4 ways on a queen high board, queen 4-3, 2 hearts, and a diamond. Action checks to me, could go either way here considering we're still multi-way, and it would be a big win to fold out, you know, the 10-9s, the jack 10s, jack 9s, king, deuces, all those hands. But if we get called, we're probably not in great shape. So I'm just going to check this one back, hope for a clean turn. And that is what we get, the 4 of spades. Action once again checks to me, and I think it's pretty clear nobody has trips here or a queen. We probably would have heard from it from now, so I'm going to go for a bet here. It doesn't be too big, 20 into the middle, and only the original limper calls. Off to the river, it is the king of spades, another overcard. She checks it to me once again, and I think her range here is going to be pocket pairs, but they could be like 9s or 10s. Maybe she has some queen X. Against the other players, I'd probably feel good value betting this, but remember, she just called us down with a flop flush, so I don't want to go too thin versus this player, and I'm just going to check this back, take my showdown, and we win versus a lower pocket pair that may have paid us off, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm happy with this $100 pot with the pocket 8s. We open up the king-queen offsuit up to $10, and only the big blind makes the call. Heads up once again with this lady, and it comes down king 10 4 2 clubs and a spade. Pretty good board. I start off with a bet of $10, and she does make the call. Off to the turn, it is the jack of clubs, improving us to an open ender, but the board's getting a little bit connected. She checks it over to me once again, and I think there's just enough value here to be betting. So I go ahead and put in another wager, $20 into the middle. She once again makes the call. Off to the river, and it's not a good card. It's a 7 of clubs. And she immediately looks at her chips and does lead out for $50. I'm not even going to think about this. I just think it's probably ace of clubs every time. So let's get out of the way and move on to the next hand. I fold. We have 3 limps, and I look down at king, queen off in the big blind. Good enough to raise up for value. And I want to go slightly on the bigger side given that we're out of position. So I bump it on up to $30 here, which gets the job done. Happy to take down an extra $10 in dead money there. Lady to our right has limped, and we have once again ISO'd her with the jack 9 of clubs up to $15. This poor lady keeps running into it, but she does make the call. We go heads up to a flop of king 7-3 rainbow. Not even a backdoor flush draw for us, unfortunately, but I think the board's good enough for us to go for a small bet with every hand, especially against a player who's a bit fit or fold. So $10, and it gets the job done. We have a button straddle out down 5-3 of hearts in the big blind. Could fold, could limp. I'm not sure which one I prefer, but this time I just go for the limp. Folds around, and button checks his option. So we're going heads up to this flop, where we flop bottom pair on jack 10-3. We've got some backdoors. Let's go for a small bet here. Fold out any 2 random cards, right? So $5. My opponent continues. Off to the turn, it is the king of clubs. I decide to check. Let's try and get to showdown, and button checks behind. Off to the river, it is the 9 of clubs. Not a great board. I check once again. My opponent checks it. I announce pair. He also says pair, and we are chopping this with 7-3 offsuit. He didn't muck. He had 7-3 off, so we're chopping that one. The same player from last hand has raised it up to $15 middle position. We look at a king, queen of diamonds, and bump it up to 50. Folds around, and he does make the call, so we're going heads up to this flop, which is kind of okay. It's queen 9-4 all clubs. Checks to me, and we're going to want to go very small here on these monotone boards.
So that is what I do, $20, and my opponent continues. Off to the turn, it's a little bit dicey. It's a jack of spades, so the board's getting pretty connected here. There's some two pairs available. But I think with the additional equity of the gut shot, our hand is strong enough to go for one more bet here. So I go for half pot, $75, and my opponent folds, which is probably a pretty good situation considering there's 3 clubs out there. Low jack has limped, and we look down at ace 10 of clubs in the small blind. I like going pretty big out of position, so I bump it up to 20. Big blind folds, and low jack makes a call, so heads up to a flop of king, jack, 6, 2 spades, and a club. Gonna go ahead and bet my entire range here for $15, and once again, gets the job done. So this player has raised it up to $13 under the gun. They're definitely on the more gambly side, probably the most gambly person here at the table, but going 13 rather than his normal 15 makes me think his range is going to be a little bit on the weaker side here. So normally with ace 10, I'd either fold or 3-bet, but I think in this instance, it makes more sense to call this hand, keep his like ace 8 offsuits in there, and then if we do re-raise, they're all folding, but he's going to continue with ace jack, ace queen, ace king, and we also fold out his hands like jack 10, queen 10 offsuit. So I think call in position here is the best option, and we do end up going heads up to the flop, and my opponent puts in a blind $30 bet. So now I'm very worried. You know, this is almost always aces, sometimes jacks, sometimes kings, and sometimes ace king, but almost always it's aces. So I'm going to proceed with caution here. The flop comes down king, jack, 10, rainbow. So it's not a great situation here, but we do have a gut shot to the nuts as well as a pair. We're going to call one here, but proceed very cautiously. So I make the call. The turn comes down the deuce of diamonds. My opponent thinks about it for a bit this time and then fires out for 60, and let's just get out of here. He's not slowing down. Maybe he has 7 deuce, but whatever. We're just going to let it go. We fold, and my opponent had pocket kings. So nice hand to him. My read was off on his $13 raise pre-flop, but that's all right. We open up the ace queen offsuit in the low jack up to $10, and only the big blind continues. Heads up to a flop of 9, 6, 3, 2 hearts and a club. Action checks to me, and this board, I'm probably going to go for the 2x over bet most likely. Ace queen doesn't make too much sense to do it, so I'm just going to check this one back and have a pretty polarized strategy on this flop. Anyways, we head to the turn. It is the 8 of spades. My opponent once again checks, and for live low stakes, when you face 2 checks, they just usually have nothing. So I think a bet here, a little bit of protection, tiny bit of value is in order here. We could get called by, you know, ace 7, something like that. So I go ahead $10, but my opponent does continue. Off to the river, it is the jack of diamonds. My opponent checks, and I see no sense in betting here. I don't think we're getting a pair to fold, and we're never getting called by worse. So that leaves one option. I check it. My opponent has a straight. He turned the straight. We are getting trapped a lot, which you don't see often in live low stakes, but managed to lose the minimum there. Good thing another heart didn't roll off, or we could have lost a very big one. The lady to our right has once again limped, and we once again ISO'd her, the poor thing. We bump it up to 15 with the pocket fours, and she does continue. Off to a flop of ace, queen, jack, rainbow. Checks to me, and gonna be betting this very high frequency, so $10 into the middle, and she makes the call. Off to the turn is the king of spades. She checks it over once again, and this hand makes a lot of sense to go for bet, but I think I'm just gonna give up. I think I've been bullying her enough, so I check it back. River is the 3 of clubs. She checks, I check back, and she has the ace, 7 of clubs. I doubt we're getting that to fold on the turn. Probably to a triple barrel, but it just didn't feel like it that time. 2 limps, and we decide to check our option with jack 10 offsuit in the big blind. 3 ways to a flop of king 10 for rainbow. We got backdoor straight and middle pair. I check it over, under the gun +2, pots it for 10, hijack calls, and there's no need to call a pot size bet and a call with just middle pair, so I just get out of there. We open up the pocket 9s here to $10. We got a caller from in position in the cutoff as well as a big blind. Go 3 ways to this flop, which comes down ace, 5, 3, 2 diamonds, and a heart. Not too many great boards for us this session, but that's okay. We decide to check it over. Cutoff fires out $30. Pot size into 2 players. When big blind folds, there's no way we're continuing here. We're just going to let it go. Button straddle is live, and we bump up the 6, 5 of spades under the gun to $15. Folds around, and only the button makes the call, so we're going heads up to this flop, which comes down very nice. It's ace, 6, 6, rainbow. I'm going to go for a small bet here, $10 into the middle, which he quickly calls. Off to the turn, it is the 10 of spades, and I think it over for a bit. And I think we want to try to cooler an ace more than we want to check and try to induce a bet out of, say, 8, 9, or just... I think he's going to stab a lot if we check, but I also think that if he checks and we go for the check raise, he can start to fold some of his top pairs. Right? If he's got like ace 8 suited that bet the turn I check raise, I think he does find a fold some of the time, but whereas if I just go bet and then another big bet on the river, I don't think he manages to fold those hands. So I think we're going to play a strategy where we try to cooler an ace and just give up the value of him stabbing at a very high frequency when we check to him. So that's what I do. I go ahead and bet once again $45. And unfortunately, he did just have one of those hands that just wants to fold and lets it go. We're looking down at 2 limps in the cutoff and button. I looked down at king 10 offsuit in the big blind. Suited, I'd probably go for the ISO, but offsuit, let's just try and realize some of our equity. I check this back. We go 3 ways to the flop of ace, jack, 10, rainbow. Bottom pair and gut shot once again for us. I check it and action checks through. We head to the turn. It is an inconsequential 4 of hearts. I decide to check this once again, and cutoff now goes for the 1.5x overbet, $15. Not too sure what to make of this. It's kind of feeling like aces, to be honest, but button makes the call, and even with pair plus gutter, let's just get out of here. There's no sense in calling this weird overbet into 2 players once you check back flop, so let's just fold and save the brain cells. In this next hand, the lady to our right has gone for her first ever open pre-flop. And we have ace king, and we are once again going to be raising her. I feel so bad. But we bump it up to $55, looking to go about a quarter of her stack here. Big blind folds, and unfortunately she just mucks, which I found quite surprising. But I did show her. I just want to show her I'm not trying to bully her or anything. But anyways, we're picking up another pot here. We once again have ace king, and we bump it up to $10 under the gun. Folds around to the small blind, who puts in the re-raise up to $35. Big blind folds, now it's back on me. Against most 1-3 players, I would just flat here very, very, very often. Because 4-betting ace-king is usually going to be an overplay at live low stakes. But versus this opponent, there is no way we are doing that. And I messed up the math here and made it $75. I meant to make it 2.5x, but as you guys know, I literally can't do simple addition. Anyways, my opponent has an easy call, which he makes, and we go heads up to this flop, 153 in the middle, 225 behind, and it comes down ace 8-3, beautiful sight. He checks to me, and we're going to go for a very small bet here, $40, about quarter pot, and my opponent, unfortunately, just folds. Damn it. The button straddle is live, and we bump up the ace-jack offsuit up to $15. Once again, only the button makes the call. Heads up to a flop of 5-5-5. Rainbow, no flush draw here. This board, you actually do want to go for a very big bet here, or just, you know, a small bet and a big bet are going to fold out 10-9 offsuit no matter what. So we want to put pressure on his ace highs, like ace 10, ace 9, and we only do that with a very big bet. Also, we generate a lot of value when we try to cooler him with the overpairs. So our strategy here is going to be mixed betting with a lot of our strongest overpairs. And we want to go for the check raise very often to try and cooler 6s, 7s, 8s. And then some of our stronger ace highs are going to want to go for the big size as well. And we do manage to get some value from worse ace highs. Usually this is around ace queen, but I can think versus this opponent, we can go ahead and pot it with ace jack for value. So that is what I do, $30 for value, and button makes the call. We head to the turn. It's a really bad one. It's a king of diamonds, meaning we're now chopping with all ace highs. So I'm probably going to be pretty selective with my bets here. I just decided to check this over, and we do face a bet of $60. I think considering that we're calling for a chop now, if he is bluffing, I don't see him having something like queen jack here. So it's going to be like ace 4 if he's betting. Or he's just got a pocket pair that's going for protection. I don't like these odds. We're either going to be calling 60 for a chop, or we're going to be drawing to just 6 outs. So, yeah, I'm just going to let this one go on the turn. A little bit unfortunate, but that's all right. We've got better hands to defend here, so I fold. We open up the king-queen offsuit up to $10. My goodness, we're getting this hand a lot, and action folds once again all the way around, and we pick up the $14. We have 3 limps, and we look down at ace-jack offsuit. Once again, we're out of position, and I like to go quite a bit bigger, so I bump it up to $30. Once again, it gets the job done. The lady to our right has once again limped, and we have once again ISO'd her. $15 with the king-jack of hearts. We get a call from the cutoff as well as the small blind before she goes for the dreaded limp re-raise up to $55. This is just kings, maybe queens, but aces way too often, so given that she only has about $100 behind, we fold. Cutoff makes the call. Small blind folds. They go to a flop. They get it in on 10 high board. Middle position had pocket kings, and cutoff had pocket jacks. We were dead. How does that even happen? Anyways, we get away for pretty cheap there. So on to the next hand. We open up the king queen off up to $10, and we get 3 callers. We're going 4 ways to this flop, which comes down 8, 5, 4, 1 club, and 2 spades. Checks to me, there's no sense in betting here against 3 opponents, so I check it and action checks through. Off to the turn, it is the 3 of clubs. Pretty inconsequential, but I still see no sense in betting, so I check, and action once again checks all the way through. River is the 8 of spades, big blind, reaches for chips, then decides against it and checks. I once again check, low jack and hijack check, and we win at showdown with king high against 4 opponents on an 8 high board. I will take it. We have 2 limps, and we look on a 10-9 of spades in the big blind, bump it on up to $20, and both my opponents make the call. Head to the flop, and it comes down queen, jack, 3, 2 diamonds, and a spades. We got backdoor flush draw as well as the open ender, and it's going to be a board that's going to be a lot better for us, considering they just limp called. So I put in a bet of 20. Under the gun plus 2 now raises it up to $50. This is just going to be pocket 3s or queen, jack every time. So when it folds back to me, we're getting a good price. Let's try and hit an 8 or a king. I make the call. Turn comes down the 5 of clubs. I check and my opponent snap shoves 160. Not much we can do here. We just ran into queen jack, unfortunately, and we fold. In this next hand, it is a big blind, so I'm not actually small blind. I think if I was, I'd probably go for the squeeze here, maybe with the king 6 of hearts, but anyways, I just decided to check it. Big blind checks. We're going 7 ways to this flop, which comes down jack, 5, 8, rainbow. I check it over, somebody bets $10, and I'm just not going to continue when there's 6 other people in the hand. There are 2 limps, and we look down a queen jack offsuit on the button, bump it on up to $20, and it folds all the way around, and we are going to take that one down, and that, my friends, is the final hand of this session.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up that video. We played for 4 hours, got very lucky with how many hands we got to play in that time. I don't think I ran too hot or too cold. I won $204, in for $500, out for $700 in those 4 hours, which is roughly what I'd estimate my win rate to be in a $500 cap game. So that is it. I hope it gave you a really good idea of what grinding 1-3 to build a bankroll feels like. That is it. You know, not too many all-ins, just a lot of small pots here and there, trying our best to overfold and to go for some very thin value in a lot of spots, and also not being afraid to pull the trigger at 1-3. You know, your opponents will be folding sometimes, so go for the bluff sometimes. Anyways, that is it for me, guys. I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for watching.